Hello, my name is Jackie Listow, and I've been invited by the Yarra Libraries as part of the Tech Talk series to speak about security and what you can do to protect your small business. I've been in security for over 2 decades, working as a consultant in government, banks, and other sectors. I worked in London for 7 years, Paris for 7 years, and now I've been back in Australia for 7 years. I recently left a big bank to join Cinch Security, who helps small businesses get on top of their cyber security. But first of all, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. The Yarra City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations here today and to their elders past, present and future. So today I'm going to be talking more about the motivations of cyber criminals, who they are and what they're after, and how they get to your data. I'm also going to give you a few tips on what you can do to protect yourself and the information you work with. So who are they? There are plenty of bad actors out there, and these cyber criminals are looking to sell information to the highest bidder. There are nation-state actors and foreign governments looking for all sorts of things that they could use. And it's kind of like what you saw the Prime Minister went on TV to talk about last year. Organisations involved with COVID-19 research are particularly interesting for nation-state actors at the moment. And competitors are always after intellectual property or insights. So, for example, if you sell a unique donut, someone might want to get hands on that recipe. Or if you're in research, they may want to get their hands on your data. And as you can imagine, all of these three elements could be aligned to each other, but each have their own motivations and techniques that they will use. And unfortunately, we hear about it in the news all the time, from hospitals being made unavailable so that operating procedures can't go ahead, or universities being shut down due to ransomware. So what are they after? Basically, they're after anything of value. So it could be your customer list, it could be sensitive information and intellectual property, it could be your license, passport details, so they could use it to take over your identity, and it could be information you collect in your business. And it's basically anything that could be valuable to a cyber criminal. Financial information such as credit card details or information about how you invoice so that they can then mimic it. The other thing that we've seen a lot more of nowadays is system and access credentials. So basically taking over your identity and access to gain access to your company or to get to a higher prize. So for example, if you are looking after the IT systems for a big bank or a big company that is the target, they may try to get to your account in order to get to that big corporate company and to a more sensitive pool of information. And that could be to gain information to that data, but it also could be to cause havoc and downtime. So think about what information you have and what would actually happen if it got into the wrong hands or it was no longer available. So what are the types of crimes that are out there today? We're going to go into that in a minute. So Australians actually lost over $176.1 million to scams in 2020. And while the true cost of cybercrime to the Australian economy is difficult to quantify, which is mainly due to the fact that people don't report it, the industry estimates that cybercrime can cost $29 billion to Australian businesses. And a lot of the time, this starts with humans. Ultimately, they want to get their hands on your hard-earned cash, and they do this by playing on, unfortunately, our human emotions and trust. So phishing is the first one that I'm going to be talking about today, because 90% of all attempted cyber attacks is due to phishing. And what they're phishing for is your information or your credentials. What they're trying to do is to lure or trick you into clicking on a link or opening an attachment, which may contain malware. And the most imitated brands of 2020 were Google, Amazon, WhatsApp, Facebook, Microsoft, and Netflix. And I can imagine that many of you listening today use one or many of those services. So just think about what you do if you receive an email coming from one of those big brands. The other one is SMS scams or smishing. And the most common one is that are received are from your bank and government. And I'll show a few examples a bit later in this presentation. Phone scams. So this is when they're pretending to be from your internet provider and they're requesting for log on into your computer. They say that you have a virus and they need to get your username and password in order to urgently go in there and take the virus out. But in fact, they are actually gaining access to put the virus in. It could be somebody calling up to say that the tax office, that you're overdue for a tax return and you need to pay a fine. The next one that I wanted to talk about is investment scams. So these are the ones where they're trying to get your business to part with a lot of your money and with the promise of a questionable financial opportunity. They often will offer a quick return of investment for a low risk and that you can become a millionaire overnight. So you'll go to a webinar potentially to talk about, to hear about what this is all about, and subsequent webinars cost money and the investment as well. So the best thing to do in these cases is to actually check the Asset Connect website to see if an investor scheme currently has an action against them, and also to check whether that business is legitimate. So the next one I wanted to talk about is the importance of why having a unique username, passwords, and long passwords is important. So back in 2016, in LinkedIn, there was a LinkedIn database breach, and they used that data to then send blackmail emails to some people last year. And what blackmail is about is that they use information that they've gathered from the internet or previous data breaches, and they put that into the email, and you are threatening to release information if you do not pay it. So in this case, it was passwords. So they lured you into thinking that they really do have your password and that they will release photos of yourself if you did not pay the blackmail amount. The other one is ransomware. So ransomware is a very lucrative business costing more than $241 million. And what happens with that one is that you will receive an email from somebody and you may click on it, and that will install what is called a malware. And that malware will then go to lock up your data. So it'll encrypt your data so then you're no longer able to access it. And you'll get a note on your desktop or on the screen that will say that your information has been locked up. And if you don't pay a certain amount of money or the ransom, then that information will be lost. So they're basically taking your information for ransom. Similar to a kidnapping, they will, they're asking you to pay a certain amount of money for the release of something. And unfortunately, a lot of companies are paying this ransom. So this is then further funding a lot of the cyber gangs. And a lot of big companies have been a victim of this type of scam. The last one that I wanted to talk about is fake email scams. So this one is when someone's trying to extort money from you by tricking you into doing something. And this is also known as business email compromise or CEO fraud, and it's increased significantly over the last few years and is one of the biggest threats to small businesses. So what they do is they try to actually get you to pay to the fraudulent account. So what will happen is you'll get an email saying, hey, we've changed our payment details, please pay to this new account, and you will be, in fact, paying to the fraudulent account. So how does this happen? So they have professional teams dedicated to researching, marketing, creating, everything. They are a full enterprise. And what they do is they look on the latest news on potential victims. So this could be that somebody's about to do a merger or acquisition. This could be information about, new businesses. They have a look at your website to find out information about yourself, email addresses. So it's always good to check to see what information is out there on your website and if you're revealing too much information. There's always a balance that we need to make between marketing and delving too much information. So what they do then is that they buy or build these lists of people and the businesses that they then want to target. Once they've chosen that target, they think about all the different ways that they could potentially approach them. So if that person is very active on social media, they will potentially reach out to them through social media and try to connect to them, start to interact with them, and then they wait for the perfect moment to strike. These fraudsters are incredibly patient, so they will wait until it's the right time to then make a move. What happens then is that the email or hack or impersonation. So they hack into that person's email so they can then send a legitimate email, or they might impersonate and use an account that's very similar. Once you're convinced that you're talking to the person that they're impersonating, they'll send an email or updated invoice detailing where they'd like you to send your hard-earned funds. And more often than not, someone targeting this kind of scam won't actually know about it until weeks later when someone calls up and follows up on a missing payment. Unfortunately, the chances of recovering these types of funds is slim, the longer the period in between, as the money has most often been transferred on internationally, which makes it really important that you report it to your bank and to the authorities as soon as you discover that you have been scammed. So this is an example of an email that's trying to lure you into paying a bank transfer, also known as CEO fraud or whaling. So this comes from Big Boss from White Goods saying, "Hi finance team, I urgently need you to complete a bank transfer today in order to win a big deal." So there'll be a sense of urgency in this email. They'll also talk about saying, "Hey, I'm in meetings all day, so I can't be contactable, but you will receive an email from this particular account with the bank account details." Sometimes they will even go as far as contacting the person in the finance team to let them know that the details have changed and that this account, they'll receive an email from this particular account as well. So what's really important is that you verify the email with a trusted number. So if you receive an email like this, you contact the person to say, okay, well, just to confirm that that person really is unavailable, you contact the EA or somebody in their team to make sure that the email is genuine. You also need to make sure that you secure your email by implementing multi-factor authentication, which is something that you put in your username, your password, and then what you need is another unique code that is generated and unique to then be put in. So it means that if a fraudster was able to obtain your username and password, they're going to need to know that unique number as well in order to get into your email. The other thing that you should do is to check your domain settings and your DMARC settings, and a lot of that information you can find on the ACSC website on how to do that. Unfortunately, these types of emails are harder to detect because in email filters in today's day and age, it gets rid of a lot of the email and the bad stuff and the spam. But with these types of emails, it's quite hard because there's only text in it, so it can be really hard to detect. So the other thing that is good to check is whether or not your email is showing up in a large data breach. So you can check your email address and your phone number in this website called Have I Been Pwned? And this is a free service that's run out of Queensland by a well-regarded security researcher called Troy Hunt. And if you discover your details here, The best thing to do is to reset your passwords and check for all of your accounts. So not just your work email, not just your personal email, but even have a look at your family, encourage your family and friends to check it too. And the other thing is that you can subscribe to his service. So when your email address gets caught up in a data breach, you can be notified, and then you can reset that username and password. But it's strongly recommended that you don't reuse passwords. So the reason behind that was what I discussed in the blackmail example. And the way that you can remember all of these passwords is through something called a password manager. So this password manager is like a vault where you can put all of your passwords, and it can really make using strong and unique passwords much easier. The other thing to check for, the other reason why it's important for you to check your phone number in here is that Facebook recently was caught up in a data breach, and people's phone numbers were caught up in there as well. So it's important to check phone number as well. So in summary, some of the things that you can do to protect yourself against scams and cybercrime are to, pause and verify. Make sure that you're aware of the latest scams that are out there. Slow down and think about what you're clicking on or downloading, and verify anything suspicious. So that's anything from emails, calls, websites, social media, especially when they're asking for information they don't normally ask for. If somebody wants to change the bank account details, call them to verify it, and use reverse Google search of an image to make sure that that image isn't being used somewhere else. Protect your data and systems, so use a password manager to remember your passwords. Look for ways to increase security on your cloud accounts. So, for example, implementing two-factor authentication on your accounts. Implement and make sure that antivirus and firewalls and ad blockers are enabled on all your devices. And this is not just for your work ones, but you should also check that for your home ones as well, and all your family and anyone that connects to your network. The other thing is to check that the latest updates are installed on everything. So this is your operating system. So if you have an Apple, the iOS system, if you are using Microsoft, make sure that you've got the latest updates there and turn on automatic updates where possible. Make sure that all the apps are up to date and all the software updates are up to date. Your web browser, the network devices that you're connected to at home. Also Sony PlayStations and your TVs, and make sure that you also back up. So just in case of a ransomware attack, you know that you don't have to pay the ransom. You can simply reformat and restart from scratch with your PC or your laptop and restore the data. And so you then have a choice if you are actually hit with a ransomware attack. The next thing is to protect your digital profile, or to check your digital profile. So do a Google search on your name, email address, phone number, and check that it's showing in the right places that you're comfortable with. If you're about to make a big investment, think about the information you want to publish and be wary about anyone contacting you after that point. And to also check, have I been pwned? Do regular checks on your credit score, and to try and see whether or not anyone has stolen your identities or requested credit. Check your email to make sure that you don't have too much sensitive information in there. And regularly check your software as well. So make sure that you always have the latest up-to-date information. The other thing that I'd like to also mention is think about who has access, what is your most sensitive information that you have in your organisation. Check where it is, who has access to it. For example, does a third party have access to it? And really question if everyone who has access needs that access. And is there any way that you can restrict it to only those who need it? Here are a few links to some well-reputed resources that I recommend that you visit after this presentation. So ScamWatch is run by the ACCC, and it gives information about the latest scams that are out there. These are not just digital scams, they can also be physical scams as well. So it's advisable to visit that website, sign up to their email notifications, have a look at their Twitter account as well and to follow that, because they often publish the latest scams. Also visit the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, where they have information on how to secure small businesses, including how to check that you have configured your email correctly and other tips and tricks. And in the event of your identity being taken over, you can contact ID Care. ID Care will help you then restore your identity and help support you in the event of cybercrime. And also, of course, Cinch. Please contact us if you have any questions. Visit this website, cinch.com.au remote, and download a checklist of all the different things that you can do to protect your small business. Thank you for your time and have a good day.